Capcom sure has been on a kind of a bad streak lately, huh? I'm not gonna go out of my way and say that they suck now, but I'd argue that they sure have been making a lot of mistakes lately. Let's see here. Street Fighter Cross Tekken's Ondis DLC, Dead Rising 3's terrible PC port, their treatment of Mega Man, the entirety of DMC, the entirety of Resident Evil 6, poor marketing for Ghost Trick, I think you get the point. But I also believe that, while not perfect, Capcom was at one point possibly the best third-party publisher around, and nowhere was that more obvious, at least for me, than what they put on the PS2. Now this is the top 5 Capcom published PS2 games, and I'd like to list 3 things real quick. 1. Only games I've played. 2. It doesn't need to be exclusive to the PS2. And 3. There's a lot more than 5 good Capcom PS2 games, so if you think God Hand or Maximo Ghosts to Glory is the best, then you're not wrong, you just don't have my opinion. Also, I've never played those 2 games. Keep in mind there will be spoilers, and well, on with the show. You know, a lot of games have odd spin-offs that don't really fit the original formula. I'm talking about Theatrhythm Final Fantasy, Onimusha Blade Warriors, Pokemon Ranger, and so on. And while Mega Man X Command Mission isn't the weirdest game around or the most questionable game around, I'll give it the honor of actually getting something right that it easily could have gotten wrong. You see, the Mega Man X series, which I love except you, is one that is very fast-paced and twitchy, requiring faster reaction times than a lot of platformers of its era. But Mega Man X Command Mission is a random battle JRPG. That kind of action can't translate, right? Wrong. Command Mission places a lot of emphasis on the speed of battle and specific button inputs to maximize combat. Always present at the bottom of the battle HUD is the order in which you and your enemies will be moving. This order can be changed and can be done so quite a bit to give yourself an advantage, which is especially helpful in certain boss fights. This game can get really hard if you let it. In addition to a regular attack, you can attack several times per turn using weapon energy on 2 sub-weapons of your choice, and this energy can also be used towards your action trigger, which is what I mentioned earlier when I was talking about specific button inputs. It's simple, but effective. But by far the most exciting part of combat are the transformations you may sometimes take on that last a set amount of turns and can seriously change the tide of battle. And if you decide to go out of your way to find them, there are some incredibly OP transformations you can unlock by bashing your head against some of the hardest optional bosses you've ever seen. I still have nightmares about Ninetales. Outside of combat, the game is acceptable. The story is above average, the voice acting is acceptable, and overall it's alright. But dang, that combat needs to come back somewhere else, and it alone pretty much got it on this list. Remember, they're my favorites. They're not the best. You know, when you make one of these top whatever lists, you're supposed to give a sort of a brief overview of whatever you're talking about and why you like it or hate it. Now, while I can certainly say I like Killer 7, I can't say I can explain it in any adequate fashion. But I'll try, and please try to listen or you'll get lost. Really, you're going to get lost either way, but I digress. Killer 7 is a game about an old assassin named Harmon Smith. Sort of. That has within him 7 distinct personalities that are all also assassins. The most dominant of which, and who I guess you could call the protagonist, is Garcian Smith. Sort of. In the game, you are sent to destroy a terrorist organization cult thing named Heaven Smile, whose mutated members are genderless, naked suicide bombers for the most part. Yeah, throwing a lot of talk about Japanese-American relations and gods. And that's about as accurate a description I can give you without spoiling anything big or hurting my brain. Did I mention that this game is also a third/first-person sort of on-rails action-adventure game that I think is also supposed to be kind of a horror game? Although I refuse to call anything a horror game that includes this. Crazy, huh? The gameplay isn't especially exciting, but the story is interesting and quirky enough that anyone who wants to try something different should like this. I know I did, and that's pretty much all I can say. Take it on my word that this is a great game. I can't really articulate why, but if you play it, I'm almost certain you will feel the same way. I'm gonna say it now. I've never been a big fan of the horror genre. Partially because I find a lot of the games in the genre uninteresting, but more because I'm very jumpy and easily startled, even though I know I don't sound that way. But there are two horror games, not counting Killer 7, sort of, that I do love. The first of which is Silent Hill 2, but Capcom had nothing to do with that game, so let's skip to the second.
Resident Evil 4.
Resident Evil 4 is the sort of classic that I'm sure we're all familiar with, but I'll go down it quickly anyways. You play as unlucky Raccoon City cop turned kung fu presidential bodyguard Leon S. Kennedy in the rescue of the president's daughter, and in his investigation into the Las Plagas, an odd zombie-like parasite found in a remote region of Spain and features a cult surrounding it. Along your way, you have to battle nearly Espanol-illiterate villagers, various monsters, and one really creepy enemy. You also have to protect Ashley, the president's daughter, once you rescue her. She's kinda annoying, but in the end, you can almost always just toss her into a trash can and forget about her for a bit, unlike, say, Sheva. Now, I admit that RE4 isn't exactly the spookiest game around. In fact, sometimes it feels more funny than scary thanks to its bonkers script and some downright hilarious characters like Luis Serra and Ramon Salazar. But nonetheless, it can be creepy at times, especially near the end, and its combat is so satisfying that I don't really care about it not being all spooky or having a fixed camera angle. Combat is based around hitting specific enemy points with a limited amount of ammo and boss fights that are an extreme version of that. You can't move while targeting, which can be annoying at times, but you'll adapt and probably like it, considering you haven't already played and beaten this game several times over by now. Now, as someone who has played both the GameCube and the PS2 versions, I find the PS2 version better because I find the controls just as good, and the extra content is only a plus. Well, whatever console you play it on, minus the old PC port, Resident Evil 4 is a heck of a good time, just as good as it was back in the day. And by back in the day, I mean 10 years ago. Can you believe that? This one not being number 1 might shock some people, but whatever. Coming in at number 2 is Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening, Special Edition. For those that kept count, that was a title with 7 words and a number. Youch. As I'm pretty sure you know already, Devil May Cry 3 stars ready for DeviantArt Dante at his youngest, and likely at his best too. DMC3 makes a lot of huge leaps forward that the second game failed to accomplish. Apparently, DMC3 features practically the same exact team that made DMC2, and they were so ashamed of what they made that they put extra effort into making DMC3 special. This really shows, as DMC3 adds a lot of great new things, such as the style system, decent voice acting, expanded ability for combos, better character modeling, new musical style, and more. The plot starts with Dante wiping the floor with some demons in his office and then giving you the reins to try and reach his level of skill. There's a lot of cutscenes in this game where Dante accomplishes something epic with ease, and while I know many don't like these cutscenes, I do. Not only are they fun to watch, they give me the impression that the gameplay after these scenes are more of a challenge, as we just saw Dante dominate something and it's now up to us to continue his streak. Or at least try to, as this game can be quite unforgiving, especially the original version. But with enough skill, it is possible to be just as SS stylish as Dante though. Speaking of rankings, DMC3 has a nice system for that. The more varied your moves are, the higher your style meter will go, and the higher it goes, the more red orbs you get at the end of the mission, which are necessary for buying items and upgrades. There are several distinct styles you can use that change the function of the circle button, allowing even more combat variations. The style meter is, in my opinion, one of the greatest gameplay mechanics in history, and without it many would be much more interested in button mashing through this game, but with it they are forced to spice it up. It helps that DMC3's combat is well built for this though, and has the added bonus of featuring nearly no environmental damage, as well as no instant environmental deaths. Something even good hack and slashes like Bayonetta suffer from. It's all about fighting the enemies here, not falling to your death. Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening Special Edition only adds and takes away nothing, so naturally it gets on here instead of the original. I recommend it to anyone with even the slightest interest in hack and slash or character action games. It is probably the best in the genre. Quick, before we go on, don't get the PC version. It's a terrible port with terrible controls, it's terribly buggy. DMC and DMC4 work fine, but this one is trash. Some of you may have noticed that I haven't put any games from Clover Studios on here. Well, while Akami is a beautiful and unique game, I've never actually finished it or really got that far into it. Consider it an honorable mention. But Clover actually did make #1. Never have I found a game as pure fun as Beautiful Joe. Every asset of this game either looks fun, sounds fun, or feels fun. The music is bouncy, the art is cartoonish, the plot is ridiculous, but above all, my favorite part here is Joe. Yes, the main character. He may not be the most complicated character ever, but it's so rare that I see a protagonist that's just happy to be there. He's just optimistic and having so much fun with it all that it's hard not to feel like him. I guess I should explain this game. Beautiful Joe is a side-scrolling beat-em-up that starts with movie buff Sentai-loving Joe at the movies with his girlfriend Sexy Sylvia. Out of nowhere, the film goes off track, with the main hero being defeated and a mech from within the film reaching into the real world and kidnapping Sylvia. Joe gives chase, and then proceeds to live out his dream as a costume movie superhero. That's hype. Big emphasis on the movie superhero thing though. Joe's superpowers are actually just film editing. Joe can either slow down or speed up time and therefore dodge bullets or punch someone so fast they catch on fire, respectively. The art design of the game is super inspired with tons of emphasis on allusions to film tropes and film creation. The movie world looks like a giant film set because it is, and when you die you can hear the director yell, "Cut, cut, cut!" You might hear that a lot because Beautiful Joe is a tough game, and some of its bosses can mess you up quickly if you let them. Not that I'm complaining though, it's a good challenge. If I had any complaints, it'd be that the game is too short. However, it features several different characters that, while going through the same stages, feature unique dialogue and gameplay, and the story is repurposed to fit them in a deliberately cheap-looking way to stay with the game's tone. The PS2 version, the one I play the most, even has the original Dante, just how Japanese game design based god Hideki Kamiya liked him. In my mind, Beautiful Joe is a timeless classic, paying tribute to movies of old and inventing its own style. It's one of the best games I've ever played in both style and in mechanics, and I cannot recommend it more. Just go for it.